brothers and sisters.
Greetings.
I'm Brother Douglas from headquarters. My wife and I, we haven't dealt with homosexuality personally, per se, between us, but we do have a child who is a professing lesbian. I just want to say also that I'm not here to shame my daughter because she'll always be my baby girl, and I'll always love her, and I'm not here to judge her as well. But this is a conversation that needs to be had and something that needs to be dealt with.
Sister Autumn.
Greetings, brothers and sisters. Where do you want me to start? Just
Start wherever you're comfortable.
I was a lesbian, I would say, starting at the age of 19. I always knew that it probably was an issue, but the church that I grew up in a Pentecostal. Nobody really preached it, so I really didn't understand it, and I always thought it was something that it can happen, right? But just listening to Pastor with all the sermons and stuff like that, my heart was convicted. This happened like 2019, when COVID first hit. That was my first sermon that I heard about being a lesbian. And I just it resonated, it stuck with me, which was the Dirty Harry sermon.
Okay.
So I kind of rewinded and kept listening to it, and then God just kept pricking my heart, like, you need to keep listening to this man. So I just kept listening, and all the questions that I thought was true, Pastor convicted and put a sword in it, because I just never heard it that raw before. My previous pastor, they always didn't preach on it, so I thought it was something that I could do and still walk with God. And when I heard Pastor say this was a spirit, that was the first time I heard somebody say that. And it just kind of stuck with me. So I just kept on praying and telling God to release these desires and this feeling that I had. Remind you, I never been with a man ever in life. I used to see my grandfather's friends, which were lesbians, and I thought that life could happen for me too. We can have kids, we can go to the doctor and do all that, but it was all just a lie. So I spent my years thinking I was something when I wasn't that. Until I ran into the truth of God, I finally understood what a woman is for, who she is for, what she's supposed to do, what the man is for. And that's what made me turn my heart against it. And I started really, really praying to God to release those desires. And I haven't practiced that lifestyle in a very long time. Not saying that I don't have friends that still are in that lifestyle, but I still try to teach them. They ask me questions, and I just try to point them to the Bible. I can't quote scriptures to them. I point them to Pastor. I point them to the message that I heard. I just pointed to the things that I've learned since I've been walking with the truth to try to turn their hearts and minds around.
Wonderful. Sarah, would you ever talk to family about this when you was younger?
No, sir.
You never would ask them no questions?
No, sir. I kept it quiet.
The incident that happened to you when you was young, did you ever tell your parents?
No, never.
Nobody, no adult whatsoever?
I've always dressed as a tomboy when I was young.
Yeah.
And my mother, she would give us whatever we wanted to wear, because I would never wear a dress, ever. The only time I wore a dress was at my when I was 7 years old, the Catholic baptism.
Yes.
That was the only time I put a dress on, but I'm not sure if they knew anything was wrong or could tell. However, I just never wore a dress. I was a tomboy.
When you were much younger, before you heard us, was there any type of inkling that this was a wrong lifestyle?
Truly, when growing up, I felt something was wrong, I would always ask myself in the back of my mind, is this right? Because of what I saw. But when I matured in age and I was in a relationship with a woman, I was actually married, I would always ask the Lord, is this wrong? I could feel something was wrong and not right because something there was missing.
Yeah.
But I would ignore it and proceed forward because I was happy. And I always had that thought, is this wrong? I always asked the Lord that.
But some people, would you say, in your experience, some people don't even know it's wrong because they've been exposed to it so long? Could they not think it's normal if that's the only surroundings they have?
I didn't have that surrounding. I grew up in a family, they didn't curse, they didn't drink, smoke, they didn't argue in front of me. I grew up in a happy home, but yet it was a spirit.
Yeah.
Truly, it was a spirit, and that was the only thing that captured me was that spirit, so I was blind. I really thought I would be saved, even though I was a homosexual. It's like trickery.
Brother and Sister Douglas, your experiences with having a child this way, what you had to endure, what did you have to deal with? How was your conversations?
To be honest, Pastor, we really didn't notice anything until our daughter was about maybe 16, 17 years old.
Okay.
We would start to see tattoos, and we knew that she wasn't of age to get a tattoo legally. I would ask her, where are you getting these tattoos at? You know, and she wouldn't tell me. She would always play basketball in the backyard with the guys. It's just, we really didn't see anything per se, but we do know that when she turned 18 years old, she moved out of the house abruptly, and she cut off all communication with us. We would see her from time to time, and every time I would see her, more tattoos, more tattoos, more tattoos. Like she was trying to cover up something. And then finally, you know, we had a talk, and she finally admitted to me that, you know, she likes women. Mm-hmm. And I asked her, because I always thought that in order for somebody to become a lesbian, somebody had to tamper with them. And I asked her, I said, did anybody mess with you when you were coming up? And she said, no, Dad, I've always been attracted to women. And I started to reflect a little bit, and I started to blame myself, because we raised our children in a traditional household. We had guidelines, we had rules, but we were a little bit liberal in that we would let our daughter stay the night over her friend's house. Thinking back now, I think that was a very grave mistake that we did. Specifically, we didn't really know the parent or parents. We knew that she would spend the night over her teammates' home because she played basketball in high school. I think personally that's where she was introduced into that lifestyle. And then again, when she turned 18, she moved out of the house because she knew we would not accept that lifestyle, and then she went full-fledged with it.
Sister Douglas, what type of conversations would you have with your daughter?
One of the conversations that I had with my daughter maybe about 4 years ago was her wanting to get pregnant. And she wanted to be artificially with the sperms, and I told her that's not God's way. That's not God's order. So that was one of the last conversations that we had, and because I wasn't accepting of her, she literally wanted me to go to the sperm bank with her and just be a part of the whole process. And I told her I couldn't support that. So that was one of the last conversations, and that kind of cut off all ties where we no longer speak. And it wasn't until just recently that she decided, with the influence of my husband, to call me, and we just recently started to talk again.
When she was younger, did you notice anything different? Before she ever came and just told you What was what? You being her mother, did you notice anything different?
Just her wanting to be with the fellas out in the backyard. She would be the only female in the backyard playing basketball with all the neighborhood boys.
The only reason why I ask that, because there's a lot of girls who are tomboys when they're young. Play with the boys and whatnot, but have no type of tendencies. So in the midst of her playing with the boys, there was no type of clue or anything.
The only thing that I could think of as a baby, being young, having a child at a young age, I was breastfeeding, and I had mentioned to another mother that I felt as though my daughter wasn't getting enough milk, and it's just so happened that the mother suggested, well, let me breastfeed her. And this woman literally started to breastfeed my child, and she was from a family of a bunch of lesbians. Her brothers was a homosexual. Not only was her siblings bisexual, come to find out her daughter, who was also around the same age as my daughter, is also a lesbian. So it may have been something that was transmitted just by sucking of the breast.
That is that's really, that's the first time I've ever heard of something like that. That is really interesting. Sister Autumn, you said this was your experience all your life?
All my life.
Where did it begin? How old were you?
The thought came, like, I would say 8 years old. Like I said, my grandfather had 2 lesbians as his best friends. And when I used to play around, like, the house and just play outside, I used to see them doing things that men and women did. So I was just curious. I was curious.
So this has pretty much influenced you.
Pretty much. And I used to always ask my grandfather, why 2 women are kissing? He just used to tell me, mind my business. But I was just curious. And all it takes is a curiosity. It really does, because nothing happened to me when I was young. I grew up in a 2-parent home, church fed, all that. And it's just the curiosity had sunk in. And also with my dad sharing with me what happened to him in the Marines, he had an encounter with the guy. So who knows, that seed could have manifested in me, and just me being curious sparked that seed, and then there it went.
I want you that are watching and listening to pay close attention. We got 3 different scenarios. Here's one, was introduced by curiosity. And this is the first time I even heard of the possibilities of an introduction by being breastfed by a woman who had homosexuality in her household. So that can introduce you to a whole lifestyle. Wow, as a little baby, and then grow up, and who knows what spirit was transmitted from one woman to a baby. And Sarah, you said your introduction was how?
At a young age.
At a young age. Various forms of introduction. Curiosity can be very dangerous. Curiosity can make you or break you. You that are watching, I want to encourage you to please get your children and get your family members into this discussion, because the churches of today don't preach it, don't talk about it, they condone it.
Amen.